Good afternoon, everybody. I'd like to welcome everybody to today's webinar, all about OTT ecosystem, players discuss market directions. My name is Patrick Buno. I'm a marketing manager with BIA Advisory Services, and I'll be running the webinar for you today. So as always, we just like to give everyone else a few more minutes to log on and get settled. So while they're doing that, we're just going to take a few minutes to go over a few housekeeping items for everybody. So I'm going to start off by reminding everybody that we are recording today's webinar and that all registered attendees will be receiving an email from us with links to the on-demand version of the webinar so they can watch it again or pass it on if they desire. So we'll keep a lookout for that for an email from us sometime tomorrow, most likely. If at any times during today's webinar you experience any technical difficulties, please just email us at webinars@bia.com. We have staff that is standing by that can try to assist you with that. And then finally, we just like to encourage everyone to try to be interactive in today's webinar. So please, if at any time you have a question on any slide, just go ahead and type it in on the questions box on your GoToWebinar panel. We'll try to get your questions today at the end of today's session. If we don't have time, we'll be sure to follow up with you separately. So I think with that, we're going to go ahead and get things started here. I'm going to turn it over to one of the moderators for today's session, the Managing Director of BIA Advisory Services, Rick Dewson. Rick, take it away.
Hello, Rick.
Patrick, thanks very much. Hey, Mitch, how are you doing? So thank you for being with us today to share in our discussion about where OTT and connected TV are headed. We're going to cover the full marketplace. We're going to focus, at least in our forecast, on a local OTT marketplace, which is also a fast-growing part of all of this. So I'm joined today by my co-moderator, Mitch Oscar, and a stellar panel of people who are making it happen in OTT and connected TV. Let me kick it over to you so you can say a couple of words and introduce our panel that we'll hear more from later.
Okay, thanks, Rick. All right, Justin, you go first. Who you are, your company, give us 30 seconds.
Hi, I'm Justin Evans. I'm the Global Head of Analytics and Insights at Samsung Ads. Samsung Ads is an advanced TV platform reaching 45 million households in the US. And my team is responsible for helping clients be successful in the rapidly evolving OTT ecosystem with data.
Adam.
Good afternoon. My name is Adam Gaynor, and I am the Vice President of Network Partnerships and Head of Addressable TV for Vizio. Vizio is another television manufacturer and soundbar manufacturer here in the US. And our business is growing from a connected TV footprint and growing from an ads footprint. And I'm excited to be here to talk to you. Thank you.
Joe. So we went out of order. Brian.
All right, I'll hop in. Hi, everyone. Brian Hunt. I am with Sinclair Broadcasting. I'm the head of OTT and connected TV advertising sales. Many of you are probably familiar with Sinclair as a broadcaster. We have 100 plus stations that we represent in different DMAs throughout the US. We recently, as many of you are aware, acquired 23 regional sports networks, as well as we previously owned the Tennis Channel. On the connected TV OTT side, we have really 3 or 4 products in the marketplace. One is Compulse OTT, which I'll talk about during this panel. We also have News On, which is a standalone OTT app, as well as Stir, and we have another app that we're a majority owner in called Stadium, which is a sports-oriented connected TV app.
Thanks, Brian. Joe, are you back?
I'm back, take 2. Hi, everybody. Thank you for having me. Joe Kinsella. I am the president of TV Squared. TV Squared is a cross-platform measurement and attribution service. We are live in 76 countries. We measure if it was delivered, if someone took an action, and if you reached the right audience. So here today, we've got about 60 publishers on the OTT side now tagged. We work with all the main DSPs. So excited to talk to you about how brands and the buy side and the sell side are leveraging OTT to really drive return on investment for their TV.
Thank you, Joe. Chris.
Yes, I'm Chris Wilson, Chief Commercial Officer for Comscore. ComScore is really focused on the measurement space with a heavy emphasis on audiences and impressions. We measure all kinds of video assets, whether that be linear from a national and local perspective, OTT, addressable, digital, mobile, and really our focus is being able to show how all those things can work together in a unduplicated basis to be able to show reach and frequency kind of horizontally across all those platforms. So that's a big focus of what we'll be talking about today as it relates to ComScore.
Thank you, everybody. Back to you, Rick.
Mitch, thank you, and thank you everybody so much for joining us today. I'm really looking forward to the discussion. So just a couple of introductory slides to highlight some of the things we're doing at BIA. Eye candy shot for some of the companies and clients we've worked with in different capacities, some specifically with OTT and other places in the advanced TV and general media network industry. Okay, next slide, Patrick. So as we focus on at BIA about what we're doing with local market, one of our areas of concentration is looking at the spend. You know, where's the money? So we have done forecasting for years at a number of different media categories. Recently, we've added OTT. We're saying that that's going to be a $1.2 billion marketplace just in local. And local OTT and connected TV have been fast rising. And local is getting more organized. So doing local targeting with the kinds of audiences and targeting capabilities and inventory that for example, Brian brings to the marketplace. So it starts off as new media sometimes do kind of in a national marketplace like mobile, and eventually opportunities and local start to open up. So I just want to highlight some of what we're seeing on the local side of OTT. Clearly with the pandemic, lifestyles have changed. We're working from home, our media patterns have changed. So there's been a lot more viewing, subscription in the OTT domain. That has been great news. It's nice to have more inventory, but it's also at a time when advertisers were cutting back, pausing, dropping spending. So trying to monetize all that inventory from a media seller perspective was a bit challenging, but we see that coming back and things will start to normalize and in the OTT space grow. So we'll cover more of that as we move through the webinar today. Okay, next slide. So just to give a sense of our forecasting, for every local market, we provide this information, but just aggregating all local spend across all the TV markets in the country, here's kind of a top line view of what that spend looks like this year. As we close out the year, this is our updated forecast. We're actually going to be coming out with another update in just a couple of weeks. But auto clearly is the big spender in OTT for local. Again, for nationally targeted OTT impressions, that's not counted in this. General services, retail, and you can see how the top group of retailers, of brands and vertical categories round this out in OTT. So that's where the spend's coming from in local for 2020. As we look ahead in the next slide, just to give kind of a sense of where we see things going in local, and so far for OTT, we've continually updated our forecast upward. So right now we're seeing 2020 close out at about $1 billion in spend for local OTT impressions. Next year we see that growing to 1.3, and then trending ahead to 2024, about $2.3 billion. And sitting here today, I'll share this forecast, but I know we're going to be upping these spending levels, and OTT is just growing very quickly. Okay, next slide. So Mitch, with that quick introduction to some of what we're seeing in the local side of where OTT spending is now and is headed, let me turn it back to you to give us a broader overview and then lead us into the panel discussion. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Rick. So the next set of slides are really going to be about OTT's evolution as part of advanced television and concentrating on the last 10 years. So circa 2010, outside of everyone knowing what linear TV is, whether national or local, broadcast cable or syndication, or even telco, two big things. TV Everywhere apps started to gain hold because the broadcast and cable networks started to allow them. And then you had ad-supported VOD. Now, ad-supported VOD was really launched in 2004, but the advertising agencies were slow to trust it because they thought it would cannibalize their audience. Next slide. So in 2012, we saw that addressability started to have platforms, whether it was Dish, Direct, or Cablevision, which is now Altice. Adam, you were at Dish and you were running sales for Dish and Sling TV and concentrating on addressability. Is that correct?
Yeah, I actually am proud to say that I was one of the founding members of the Dish Media Sales Organization, and I helped bring addressable TV to the market.
And then we're going to talk about what you're doing with Vizio and the Smart TV Initiative Project OR. So we'll be discussing that. When we go to the next slide. Then in 13, programmatic TV came around. Many companies were betting on it. More managed service, not really self-serve. And it was once burgeoning, but it's kind of shifted from linear, where many companies were hoping to get inventory, to now CTV. So as it's thinned out, some of the names that we remember, Adapt TV, AdMore, Videology, Videa, TubeMogul. These were companies that were once betting on managed service and programmatic TV. Next. 2015 comes along and we start to see virtual MVPDs, whether it was Sling TV with a skinny package. So Adam, you were at Dish and Sling back then, correct?
Correct, yeah.
Okay, and then we also saw HBO Now, which was important because you no longer needed a subscription to a pay TV provider to access content. So we thought that was a great development. Next page. Then we got this thing called contextual audience networks, which is really platform sales, portfolio across everything that major media companies own. So they can be like digital and have target on behavioral characteristics. Next. 2017. And then we started to see the arrival, more in force, of OTT, although some companies were there earlier. But really, we saw three flavors evolve. There was closed loop, which Samsung and Vizio could be a part of, and Roku, where they had registration information, third-party data, and attribution. You had aggregators like TV station groups. And Brian, you said your company represents three, which are, again, just quickly as a paid political announcement.
NewsOn, Stir, and Stadium.
All right, and then we saw Flixes, or direct to consumers, which we'll talk about a little later. And then we evolved something called FAST, which is the latest iteration, free advertising supported TV services, which we'll talk about a little later. Next page now for a commercial break. So it's great to be talking about the platforms, but what supports the platforms? And the two big things starting in 2017, next page, was ACR infusion and attribution. So Justin, ACR infusion, can you just give us a description of what ACR is?
Sure. ACR stands for Automatic Content Recognition, and it's a technology that recognizes the video image on a screen, matches it to a library of TV content or TV ads, and logs that as a data point in a big data set that can be used for insights for advertisers and agencies.
Thank you. And so, Joe, I saw that you and your team, TV Squared, started really entering the mindset in 2017. Right now, in the OTT realm alone, I know you're doing business with Vizio, Sinclair, Hulu, Tubi, CBS All Access, NBC, Spot On, and many others. So is that true?
That's true.
Okay. And did D2C brands have a lot to do with it? Because somehow at that time, there seemed to be this whole influx of cash from digital, from D2C brands. If it is true, why do you think that happened?
So I think that's true. I mean, since the start of the year alone, our clients have increased OTT impressions by 400% across day parts, Mitch. But increasingly, direct to consumer has been our biggest industry vertical for the last 2 years. And 2020 was no different. The majority of our hundreds of US D2C clients that are on linear, 25% of them have expanded into OTT CTV advertising, and that number's rising daily. Why is that? Because you need to be able to measure and attribute TV how people watch it. So with this new influx of all the different platforms, advertisers now realize that they have to be able to measure impression delivery across platforms, but also, did somebody take an action? Did my ad work? And that's what we've been really leaning into. And D2C is paving the way because they are digital natives that believe in transparency and adoption of data and technology to support ROI for what they spend.
Thank you, Joe. Now back to the program. Next. So 2019-20, we see direct to consumer, very big. I would call them Flixes early on. And I know Netflix and Amazon and Hulu started in 2007. And then we had CBS in 2014. But all of a sudden in 2019, it took off. And if you're reading the news, many major media companies are restructuring around streaming. And then the last category that's really kind of been more prevalent recently has been the premium video ad networks, particularly omni-channel, have been making the news. So next. So all of this seems to be balanced on, and Joe indicated it, cross-platform impressions, whether they're verifiable, measurable, or attributable. Chris, why don't you take this and tell us the importance of going to impression-based analysis?
Well, I mean, I think when you look at the marketplace, historically, a lot of media was from the agency or brand perspective was kind of planned and purchased within an individual silo. And what I think is happening now, especially as advertisers are looking to understand how all these things work together, that's on the slide, they're moving more towards kind of a horizontal planning purpose, horizontal approach, meaning like, how do these things work together to accomplish my goal? Now, when you look at that, everything except for television has been bought on impressions. So what's going to happen is, in order for us to bring the video landscape together, audiences and impressions versus demos and GRPs is going to be what is going to be that common denominator across the cross-platform world. So what's key here is being able to understand how those things work together and deduplicate them, meaning, did you see a OTT ad? Did you see an addressable ad? Did you see a linear ad or a data-driven linear ad? And how all those things work together to accomplish the advertiser's goal. And to Joe's point, once they've been exposed to those ads, understanding what the outcome is of that ad exposure, because it is about accountability, it is about return on media spend. And in this very fragmented marketplace, it's critical to understand as an advertiser how you build your plan up across all these different advertising options. And that just really hasn't been the case in the past. And that's really what the future of measurement is being able to plan and buy and understand impact across all these different items that you just listed, Mitch.
All right, thank you, Chris. So this is up to Rick, but if anyone's interested, this is the chart as of today, rolled up. Rick, is it all right if people email you or BIA, you will send them the chart?
Yes, of course.
Okay, and what is your email address?
rducey, R-D-U-C-E-Y at BIA.com.
All right, thank you. Next chart. All right, so we'll take a second for everyone to just think about what they had. And while you're thinking about that, let me go to the next page. All right, so rules of engagement for today's panel. Each panelist will be given 1 uninterrupted minute to speak at the beginning of each segment. The microphone for the panelists who are not speaking during that time will be muted. All panelists' mics will be open for the rest of each segment, allowing panelists to interject as they go back and forth on topics. The panel discussion will be divided into the following segments: OTT reach extension, advertising agency, OTT buyers, addressability in the OTT realm, and impressions, whether measurement, cross-platform, or attribution. All right. So now we will get into the panel discussion. All right, so Justin, let's start with you.
All right.
I've known you, and since in the last 10 years, you've always been interested in reach extension of traditional linear TV. Back in 2011, you created the TV Accelerator product at Broadband Ad Network Collective, where I think it was with Chris Wilson at Rentrak, now ComScore, that you work with. Is that true, Chris and Justin? You guys worked together then?
We did.
Absolutely. I'm smiling with the happy memory.
Okay.
Yes, very fun memories.
So Justin, then you moved to Comcast to run their research group. You implemented a reach extension concept by expanding the number of high indexing TV cable networks in a campaign to build reach, as well as the inclusion of an attribution element with Joe at TV Squared. So Joe, did that TV attribution product bear any fruit for Comcast?
Absolutely. Still live today. Over 900 advertisers use it, predominantly automotive, and it's alive and kicking.
All right, thank you, Justin. So now you're running research and data analytics at OTT Samsung, largest universe of smart TVs with 45 in the US with 45 million households. Why the interest in reach extension, and can you give us some directional insight into the value proposition of OTT reach extension to linear TV network viewing? Take it away.
Yeah, when we look into the ACR data on a daily basis, we really have started to see a trend. Not only a trend in the increase in time spent and viewers of streaming video in general, but we started to see a trend in the number of people who are only streaming and are no longer watching linear on their television. In Q3 of this year, we saw that number hit 25% of all of Samsung devices. Those devices, 25% of Samsung devices were not used to watch linear. They were only used to watch streaming. And that's gone up quite a bit. That was 21% a year ago. And that puts the incremental reach conversation, I think, into an even more urgent perspective than it's ever been in. Because in a way, it becomes not incremental reach, it becomes initial reach, it becomes primary reach. And in an environment like that, in an environment like today's economy, I think it's a really overwhelming challenge to put on an advertiser and an agency to say, you're going to come into this television game with 25% of the audience that's just unreachable through your standard tools. So OTT has become a really crucial means of reaching that quarter of the audience that is only streaming. And from an incremental reach perspective, we've taken to using this structured analysis for our clients where we look at heavy linears, medium linears, and light linears. In other words, people who watch linear, a heavy, medium, and low amount, plus the cord cutters I was just mentioning. And as we look at client campaigns, what we see is a really challenging dynamic, which is challenging in a way. We see that linear does a great job at being linear. Linear does a great job at reaching heavy linear viewers. And it does a pretty good job at reaching medium linear watchers. But when it comes to light linear watchers, we're seeing about 5% reach in that light linear group. So advertisers are leaving an enormous amount of opportunity on the table with these customers that they could be communicating with, but the linear tools are so lopsided towards the heavy linear, where they're getting about 95% reach of that segment, that there are a lot of customers that are not being communicated with. So I think that the incremental reach theme is actually more urgent than ever, and probably more urgent for clients' businesses than they're aware of.
All right, well, Justin, let me jump to Adam then. So everyone knows Vizio's Inscape is the preeminent provider of smart TV ACR data for the industry, unlike you or Roku, for example, who require advertisers to run a campaign to access their viewership data. Vizio has been communal. Adam, why is ACR viewership so valuable to the media community?
Well, I think that the ACR data set represents just a new view of what's being watched. I mean, historically, viewership has been measured in a different way. And when the TV knows what's on the glass, that information, and I think it was said earlier, it just becomes a new data point. And that data point can be used in lots of different ways for planning and for optimization, for measurement, for, lots of different KPIs that are helping to take traditional television content and make it more actionable.
All right, well, Chris, what's ComScore's interest in licensing smart TV data?
So, well, a couple things, Mitch. I want to add something to what Justin said first, if that's okay. So I think that Justin's right on the incremental reach piece, which I think is super important. It's how all these things work together, and leveraging the OTT platforms to be able to get that reach extension is critical. But I also think it's important from the standpoint of balancing frequency. So one of the things that as it relates to different types of viewers. So as it relates to the hard to reach viewer, I think it's important as we do these types of analysis to understand those different frequency buckets and be able to allow advertisers to understand how to spend their ad dollars to maximize not just their reach, but also their frequency within their reach so they get better conversion. So I think that's a really important point I want to throw out there. As it relates to the ACR stuff, yes, I mean, ComScore licensed ACR from Vizio and from others. We think it's an important component to it. We also have access to data from every major MVPD. We'll be integrating the Comcast data completely in January. From our perspective, I think what's important is how the ACR data works in conjunction with the MVPD data is critical, because you need to be able to deduplicate in order, from a planning and buying standpoint, deduplicate the ACR data within the MVPD footprint. Justin mentioned there's a percentage of people that only have streaming services, but there's a large percentage that have both the streaming and the MVPD. So we need at ComScore to be able to understand which of those sets are Vizio sets or Samsung sets or whatever the case may be, because typically homes have different types of televisions within that. With the MVPD data, you have visibility into all the sets in the home, and the ACR data can be fragmented. So it's a function, which is okay. The function of being able to understand how to get those things to work together to help advertisers really understand the impact of their ads and who they're reaching and how they're reaching them. So ACR is critical for us, but it's also a part of a bigger whole as it relates to looking at the overall video consumption universe.
All right, so let's move now to the advertising agency buying community.
Mitch,
So
before we do that,
yes,
I want to just jump in and give an example of something that we saw this year that's an example actually from USIM, the agency that we're involved there. Oh, somebody's calling you.
Okay.
We worked with Tubi to measure incremental reach OTT delivered for Winn-Dixie. Winn-Dixie, as you guys know, is really a CPG-focused bricks and mortar grocery store. But we're increasingly seeing them moving to D2C models. And they had 79% of households' reach were incremental to linear, and 54% of exposed audiences actually took an action, visited the grocery retailer's site and purchased something. So I think it's just so critical to be able to give those types of insights to the advertiser. We partner with Vizio to do incremental reach. And to Chris's point, I think the more data sets that we get, the greater collaboration and adoption across the industry, the easier it will be for advertisers to be able to identify what their incremental reach is across different OTT platforms. Absolutely critical for them to know where to put the dollars.
All right, so let's go where the advertising TV buyers putting their TV and digital video buyers putting their dollars. So I want to use Hulu as an example. So Hulu campaigns were originally purchased by the digital video experts. Then the TV networks a couple of years got permission from the national TV buyers to use Hulu content, which is primarily scripted programs from the content partners, Disney, Time Warner, Comcast, NBC, and Fox back then, for audience deficiency make goods. TV buyers got comfortable with Hulu and started to claim purchasing of its inventory as theirs. The digital video buyers cried foul because they said that since Hulu was a streaming platform, it fell within their domain. So who do you guys sell your value proposition to at the advertising agency? Brian, let's start with you. You're one of the largest TV station groups in the US, 23 regional sports networks that you acquired from Disney. You deployed 3 OTT platforms. Who do you approach at the agencies in the buying arena?
Yeah, well, we're mostly, we can go to the digital side or the TV side. It really depends on who at that agency has the budgets for OTT.
Oh, no, I know you're flexible. My question is who specifically, because everybody's flexible, but you're the national TV buyer, the local buyer, the digital. So I'm trying to get more of a sense specifically.
Well, honestly, you're seeing it at the national level and you're seeing it at the local level. I mean, Sinclair, just by our nature, we tend to be, much more of a local media play where they're buying us with set either CPMs or trips, or in the digital side, impressions per a geography. And usually that's mapped to a DMA. So it's the local investment teams where we're seeing a lot of the, interactions. And I can tell you that, we're definitely seeing an increase in the percent that is going to be planned in OTT as an overall percentage of the budget for 2021. That's what we're hearing, and those are some of the, RFPs that we're getting. So from my purview, because that is my purview, I'm excited about that. But at the same time, I think, it's important that you have the right resources in place, the right reporting mechanisms to make sure that you're able to get on a lot of those ad buys. And we, a couple of folks on the panel here, for our Compulse OTT product, which is what our local markets are selling, and we sell those to ad agencies both locally and nationally. Is an aggregation of connected TV ad impressions. One of the things, you started your question with Hulu, and Hulu is a fine product. It's actually one of the few publishers that we actually don't have as part of our Compulse OTT product, because while Hulu has enough scale to sell on their own, many publishers individually don't. And so we've taken the approach to aggregate together multiple CTV publishers, including some of our owned and operated apps as well, and sell those in local DMAs and local markets. And we have about 1,000 salespeople throughout the country at our stations and our regional sports networks that sell that. And one other interesting point I should say is that increasingly the reporting piece, even at a local and regional level, is becoming more demanding. And we use, ComScore. We use ComScore as a third-party impression validator on our reporting. We've worked with ComScore for several years. We're starting to work with TV Squared on a web measurement attribution product for CTV. I should mention we're actually buying ad impressions from both Vizio and Samsung. So all the panelists up here in some way, shape, or form, we have a commercial, arrangement with. So it's an exciting space, and I will tell you the budgets are definitely increasing for 2021.
Thank you. So Adam, who do you guys kind of approach at the agencies predominantly?
Yeah, predominantly, I would say it's television buyers.
Okay.
The Vizio Ads team has been around just for a year, and the growth has been unbelievable. We have, I think, have done an incredible job of adding channels to our platform, and we know that in with Vizio owners, 48% of them are without a traditional cable or satellite connection. And so that gives us an opportunity to really bring an audience forward to advertisers and to agencies. But given that this content looks a lot like TV content, it's typically, I think, being bought by video and television investment folks. But I think there are plenty of relationships that we have on the digital side as well.
And who do you do business with on the panel? Relationships.
I think we're doing business with everybody on the panel. We are all incestuous in one way or another in this business.
Okay. So Justin, Samsung, who do you primarily approach for buying?
Also, it spans traditional TV buyers and digital buyers. What's really interesting to me is how much those different players have different interests and different focus areas for what they really care about. What we see with the traditional TV buyers is that they're really focused on duplicated reach. They're concerned that they're spending a mountain of money in traditional television and a mountain of money in OTT and digital, and they don't know where the waste is. It's kind of the 21st century version of the Wanamaker phrase that they know half is wasted, they just don't know which half. And then on the digital side, not exclusively, but generally we see a greater emphasis on targeting, a lot of emphasis on shaping the analytics around the right targeting groups and deploying those broadly, and of course on attribution of performance as well.
Okay, so Joe and Chris, who do you approach at the agencies to help them understand the value of OTT in their marketing mix? So Joe, go first.
It's exactly that, Mitch. It's about, and it depends on the agency, right? So we work with a ton of independent agencies. They use us to get competitive advantage. They can prove deterministically now what's working and what's not working. They can also, it's a proof of performance, right? It changes the conversation. So if it's a smaller agency, it's very much focused on, did this work? Did this not work? Testing and learn strategies. If it's the bigger agencies, then typically what they're using us for is they white label our platform. They love the always on nature of it because, you know, constantly getting updated with campaign insights. To Justin's point, we are seeing more lean into audiences and targeting and enabling those types of conversations to happen. It really depends on the business case of the advertiser. There is no one size fits all, but it's about helping them answer the different questions, right from, is it just reach and frequency they want to understand, or is it all the way through to audience? And it really depends on the size of the agency. We are seeing finally a real ask for help from a lot of the bigger guys saying the cross-platform stuff is hard. We still try to do a lot of it in Excel. We have thousands of planners and buyers. Can you help us measure this, tie it to a business outcome, identify what audiences we should be leaning into, and then really close the loop and help us optimize the inventory so we can drive the biggest efficiency for the brand advertiser. We are starting to see that need for transparency really kick up, especially since we've been in lockdown.
Okay, and Chris, chime in.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think Joe's right. I mean, it's a different world than it was even a year ago. I think the situation with COVID has accelerated that innovation. But one thing I'll say is, and I think it's why it's hard to answer the question, like who do these guys call on to sell their inventory? It's primarily because I think that at the agency level, they're rethinking how they're doing business. They are more focused on outcome. They are more focused on audiences, and you know the budgets are integrated. If you talk to the large holding companies, virtually every one of them will tell you, I need to be able to plan what they want to be able to do is I want to be able to plan with a single budget to manage touch points across consumers, across all my inventory types, and understand how all these things work together to impact the greatest, to have the greatest outcome. You know, who was exposed to the ad, within what audience, did they convert? And then more importantly, once they converted, how can I tie that analytics back to my next plan? So it gets back to a lot of the digital mindset of, you know, my response model. How can I employ my response model into my next plan so I can get smarter and smarter and smarter? But it's about how everything works together. So a lot of the focus that Comscore has with our agency customers is helping them solve those kind of holistic planning and buying problems. And again, I think that's one of the reasons why you're seeing such a big groundswell for moving to impressions, because that is the common denominator. Audiences are you know, what advertisers want to target, similar to what they've done in digital for years. It's finding its way into all video content. And then once they're exposed to the ads, did I get my return on media spend? And then, you know, rinse and repeat. And I think they want to, you know, start to think about their businesses that way. So I do think you're going to see a convergence of all these different departments within the agency as it relates to how they spend their dollars.
Thank
And
you.
as far as who we call on, we call on everyone at the agency across all fronts, just based on the suite of products and services we offer.
So following that, and Joe and Chris in particular, do you think the agency buyers, whether it's TV buyers or digital video specialists, pay attention to their data siblings when it comes to evaluating data sources and actually implement their recommendations? Chris, your thought?
I think they do. I mean, at the end of the day, you know, I think a lot of agencies, and I don't want to speak for any individual one, are rethinking their business models. And ideally, I think they want to try to move to a model where they get paid for performance versus just on FTE or full-time employees. They want to basically be able to go in and show their brands, this is the impact that we got, and therefore this is what our value is to you, and then therefore this is what our fees should be. And I think in order to do that, not just paying attention to the data, but also paying attention to the quality of the data, and making sure that it is helping them accomplish their goals, which is to either generate sales or brand awareness or whatever their metric of success is. So I do think it's a really important piece, and I do think they pay attention.
So Joe, I know it's important that data people are receptive or not and skilled, but when they make recommendations to the TV buyer or digital video buyer, do you think that the execution group really pays attention to the legislators?
Absolutely they do. And some are more advanced than others, right?
Okay.
It depends. That being said, there are buyers using our platform to optimize media mix for brands on a weekly cadence. So, you know, let's take, let me give you an example. A well-known meditation app.
No, hold on for a second. So we're going to move that. I wondered if they were cooperating. You and Chris seem to think they are, so that's good. So let me move on.
They have to. Here's why. If they don't, the advertiser is going to start moving money away, right? They have to. So
that's okay.
Yep.
Data is available now. The data is available now, and it's working. So they have to lean into it. Otherwise, the client, the advertiser, is going to take their dollars and spend them somewhere else. It's that simple.
Okay, let's move on to addressability. So Adam, as previously mentioned, unlike OTT rivals, Vizio licensed its ACR data. This last year, you guys launched Vizio Ads, and you've been at the forefront of launching a smart TV addressable platform, Project OR. I understand there were two major smart TV addressable initiatives in the offering. Project OR, which is in tech trial right now, and by beginning of 2021 should be available in 10 million smart TV households, with your members determining when to light up their inventory. And your rival, which is Nielsen AVA, which is slated to launch in fourth quarter with 15 million homes and has now been delayed to launch sometime by the close of the first quarter 2021 with only 1 million households. Any insight about Nielsen's initiative? In fact, if anyone listening has any insight about Nielsen AVA, please contact me. All right, Adam, back to you. Please
I'll
let
say
us
this.
know. So please, Adam, tell us about Project OR and its value proposition.
Right. I'll talk about Vizio and not necessarily
That's
about
right.
Nielsen.
Okay.
And I think my answer is going to help answer the last question about insights, in that I work for the television manufacturer. So it's a lot easier to implement something on a smart TV when you're part of the smart TV. I'll just say that. Project OR launched 2 years ago. And where we sit today, as I now head up everything addressable for Vizio, is we've got a number of our network partners that are actively testing and trialing as we speak. And I do believe we will go live with a campaign or two before the end of the year. And we are expected to be at that 10 million mark before the end of the year. So we're excited about that. But what Project OR is all about is enabling networks to bring addressability to their inventory. And I think that's an important piece in this discussion about OTT, because as television viewership changes and as how people watch television continues to change, the television networks themselves have to figure out how to reinvent. And it's not just as simple as let's take our content and put it on an AVOD platform. It's about understanding how to deliver content to consumers, and it's also about understanding how to deliver ads for advertisers. And I think addressability, linear addressability, really helps that bridge between linear and streaming, because it's bringing the KPIs and the capabilities of digital to a television system that, for the most part, hasn't changed in the last 50 years. And so we're very encouraged by the number of networks that are leaning forward on this and that are actively doing what they need to do to get ready. And I'm excited for what 2021 is going to bring, not just because we got to get out of 2020, but because I think there's a lot of activity that's going to be fun to watch.
Thank you. So Chris, need your help a little. ComScore has been verifying MVPD impression-based viewership since activity since 2004, when you did ad-supported VOD, when that launched.
Yep.
You've been doing linear addressability since its arrival in 2012. So could you please explain the difference and similarities between MVPD addressable measurement, OTT addressability to device, and smart TV addressable initiatives?
Well, I think yes, I will do my best to do that in a short period of time. But the one thing I'll say is, as Adam knows, I mean, he was a part of it. ComScore has been measuring local addressable, meaning MVPD inserted addressable, for 8 years, as you mentioned. That's allowed us to put the pipes in across all the major MVPDs. We are now doing beta tests, of which Adam and OR is part of one of those, where we are actually doing the measurement across OTT and MVPD inserted addressable ads, and then basically taking the measurement of that for those national networks and stitching them together. Meaning, like, if I am a major national programmer and I'm inserting on multiple MVPDs and on OR through OTT or smart TVs, I need to be able to understand what the delivery of that was for a particular advertiser. So because of the nature of our census data and the fact that we have information from all the MVPDs, that's about a 50 million household addressable footprint. Now, that allows us to be able to do it at scale. It gives us, the ability to basically understand how to add those impressions up by audience and verify delivery. But it's as important the fact that because we have those impressions, those addressable impressions, we have the ability to back them out of traditional linear measurement. So what happens is C3 breaks. So average commercial rating breaks. You need to have actual ad exposure. By being able to understand which ads were addressable and which ones aren't, you can back them out at scale and understand how all those pieces work from an ecosystem perspective. As far as we're concerned, we are beta testing right now with several MVPDs, with several networks. We are ready to go from an operational perspective, and we'll be rolling that out early 2021. To be able to support national programmers, local MVPDs, or any type of addressable campaign measurement that's needed.
So Brian, TV station groups are deploying ATSC 3.0 Next Gen TV. You'll bring more content distribution to mobile and other platforms, and you'll enable ad delivery addressably. Is addressable capability important to TV stations? Is it a natural extension between linear and OTT? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, is it important? Yeah, I think it's important as the demand, for it grows. You have to have the supply. We've taken a little different path and have not to date participated in Project Aura. As you know, we're big supporters of the ATSC 3.0 initiative, which in essence does the same thing with broadcast. So as more of those chips that are in the set-top, TVs get, delivered and come online, the more audience we'll all have. But, I should make a note that on the OTT side, connected TV specifically, we can do pretty granular targeting today. Because you're delivering to an IP address through your device graph, we happen to use a couple of the most prevalent, probably being LiveRamp, which has literally 200 million devices as part of that device graph, which is anonymized, meaning it's CCPA, PII compliant. We can then take third-party data sources that are deterministic from people like Equifax and Experian and Lotame and others, and actually match those and really deliver pretty granular audiences. A simple use case might be, I want to reach a homeowner who has an income of 150,000 plus, who owns a car. I mean, you can layer on this data targeting and you can do it in specific geos. So, increasingly, I think that's why both the ComScore or TV Squared and different measurement companies are becoming increasingly important. So, I think addressable is exciting and showing a lot of promise, whether it's through Project Aura or through the ATSC 3.0 initiatives. But in OTT connected TV, you can do a lot really granular targeting today. Just alone, our platform, we have over 6,000 different data segments that we can target to.
So, Joe, the set-top box and device, how does one match up identity and set-top box information? What's your experience, or what are you guys thinking?
So right now, obviously identity, and you need identity as part of deterministic data modeling. We've partnered with BlockGraph to be able to do that. BlockGraph owned by Comcast, Charter, and Viacom CBS. So being able to tie a BlockGraph ID to an MVPD household and make sure it's all done very securely. I think, Mitch, it maps to, on the addressability front, we're working with OR, as Brian said, we're working with Sinclair. Addressability, we've already proven with Sky in the UK, part of the Comcast family, but it's just another form of supply that needs to be measured and tied to an outcome. And to Brian's point, we can get really granular when we're looking across contextual audiences using Experian or LiveRamp or TransUnion. And the good news is it's available now. So
I think that's one of the. Sorry, Joe, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say,
yes,
it's simplifying it, right? Because it sounds hard, but actually we've kind of unpacked it to make it available for everybody.
So, Justin, what do you want to say?
Yeah, Justin, I was going to say that that single deterministic view across these multiple ecosystems, we're seeing emerge to be the key to managing the new video ecosystem. When you can identify and reach your key targets in a linear environment and an OTT environment, you're then able to marry reach across those two very divergent ecosystems where consumer behaviors are splitting. I get a little concerned with people getting too excited about addressable linear simply because it doesn't solve the problem of the people who are watching less linear. But if you do together on a deterministic fashion, then you have a unified view of the audience. And then similarly, you can link up the linear and OTT ecosystem on the back end for attribution. And I think that's really the key to how I think agencies and advertisers are and should be thinking about the new video ecosystems through that dual lens.
So let me get then the last question.
Well, Mitch, let me just add one thing though, because I typically
Who is that?
it's Adam. I typically agree with Justin, but at the end of the day, just let's be clear, linear television still exists, and it's a big chunk that's out there, and there's no doubt that everything is moving in the OTT direction, but there's still a lot of linear TV, and so why I think a linear addressable does make sense is it helps bridge that gap. It helps people,
Let me ask then the last question, which will dovetail, Adam, on what you're saying. So I understand how the media community traditionally relies on panel measurement for linear TV, and how addressability in the MVPD or OTT space is based on ads served. How will the two mesh when the TV networks deliver addressable ads via MVPDs and smart TVs? How will the non-addressable portion of the linear TV ad be reported? So Adam, I interrupted you. You can be the first one I ask that question to.
What I would say is, look, the O in OR is open, which means all of the members can start to work with different parts of the ecosystem to help with measurement. And I think, Chris and his ComScore team are working on solving that. I think Joe and her team have taken a stand in trying to solve that. And I think there are others in the marketplace that are trying to solve that. I agree. You can't do addressable TV in a vacuum. You have to be able to measure it amongst everything else that's being done. And I think that we will be able to hear something very soon on how to add a non-addressable ad to an addressable ad and still get delivery of that ad.
All right, and Joe?
Talk to me.
Okay, so it's really, I get the addressable portion, you serve the ad, but before we've been relying on panels and linear, and now part of that, if from what Adam and from what Chris is saying, there's going to be a national TV network addressability. How will we measure that portion that didn't receive an addressable ad?
You'll let us figure that out, Mitch.
Okay, thank you, Joe. And Justin? No, Joe, give a shot. How will that happen?
So if it's a non-addressable ad, I mean, the reality is all inventory should be able to be measured.
No, hold on. No, Joe. No, let me get more specific on the question. So there's panel right now, and the panel says basically C3, this is how, what you delivered. And we go, great. If that's the reality, that's the reality. It's traditional. We live with it. But now let's say, as Adam is with Smart TV or the MVPDs are going to light up for national ads, all of a sudden, if there was 10 million homes that were reached and 1 million went to the addressable ad, we know the million, but the 9 million, how do we measure those? Because that's not quite one-to-one impression-based. What is your thinking on that? Because I know individual ads can be certainly measured, and you're doing it through measurement, you're doing it through attribution. Do you have any feeling about it? And you don't have to. Okay.
No, I think there's a way that you can model data, and we've been doing it for 8 years, and that's why we've been so successful in that, back in the day, remember, there wasn't ACR, there wasn't a panel. In some countries still where we operate, there isn't ACR data, there isn't a deterministic match. So you can take a probabilistic approach to making sure that you can model up certain data sets to get the result that you want and still get the coverage of the 9 million plus the 1 million that are addressable.
All right.
There's data out there, Mitch, that makes this possible. And again, while it might not be 100% every single time, it gets the hockey puck a damn sight down the course. So that's what we work towards.
All right. Well, Chris, talk to us about the hockey puck or stick. What's your feeling about the addressable?
Yeah, I mean,
non-addressable?
one of the reasons why ComScore has built the footprint we have with the MVPDs and made huge investments in those information assets is we have that at scale. So, for example, we work with every major MVPD. We have 75 million plus devices or televisions that we measure in our footprint. And we've been looking at exact commercial ratings, not average commercial ratings or C3, for probably close to 8 years. Now, what that gives us the ability to do, as Adam's familiar from the work we've done at Dish, is that gives us the ability to actually do pretty simple math and back out the homes and the devices that were exposed to that addressable ad from those that weren't. And so, you know, for us, that reconciliation is pretty straightforward. Now, it does cause a lot of disruption in the marketplace, but it'd be very difficult for the guys across the street to leverage a panel of tens of thousands of people to take that addressable inventory and properly back it out in order to understand exactly who was left and how to reach them. So, you know, for us, it's, I don't want to say it's a simple problem to solve, but based on the scale of the data we have, it's a simple math problem. And it's something that, you know, as multiple advertiser addressable ads or MASO come into the forefront, it's going to become a real problem that it's going to have to solve in the industry to understand how all these pieces work together. So it's something we spent a lot of time on and a lot of energy on to make sure that as addressable continues to grow and as more inventory becomes available, especially with the national programmers, that there's solutions in place to help support the brands and the agencies and the sell side customers.
So thank you, everybody. We appreciate your impressions. And back to you, Rick.
Mitch and everybody, thank you so much for being in this discussion today. Got lively, got deep, and got very insightful and helpful. So we appreciate what everyone's done. We will get information to everybody about linking up to the on-demand version of this webinar and the slide deck. And let me turn this back to Patrick with a few closing instructions. But we look forward to having you join us again for future webinars. Thank you very much for sharing part of your day with us.
Thank you, Rick. That concludes today's webinar. We'd just like to encourage everyone to email Rick if you want to get that chart or if you want to have any other questions. And also, as you log out today, we just have a quick follow-up survey. If you guys can fill out real fast and let us know what your thoughts on today's webinar, we'd really appreciate that. And we appreciate your feedback as always. So with that, that'll conclude today's webinar. So I appreciate everyone for taking the time with us and I hope you have a good day. Talk to you soon.